Hi, I'm Deepika. I'm a postdoc at Stockholm University, and I'm very excited to be presenting our work, Invisibility or Visibility in Intimate Care at the Workplace, examining the use of breast pumps. And my co-authors are Madeline, Balaam and Airi, Lampinen. Intimate technologies have started gaining increasing attention in HCI and interaction design research. These are technologies which interact closely with the intimate body or which relate to intimate body processes. Devices have also become smaller, smarter, and more wearable. This has inevitably changed how and where people look after their body. Caring for the self is increasingly fluid and traverses private and public spheres. This paper focuses its exploration on what happens when intimate technologies move from a private setting to a professional setting. In this study, we examine the use of breast pump at the workplace. So just a quick note on what is a breast pump. It is a mechanical or electrical device that a breastfeeding parent may use to extract milk from the breast, such that they can feed it later to their infant. For a variety of reasons. For example, the parent may be dealing with over milk supply, or there are situations when infant is separated, such as in NICU, the parent is out of the home, or the parent doesn't feel comfortable in feeding from the breast. So we did a qualitative interview study with 19 individuals to understand what it means to be pumping at the workplace. And these individuals were recruited through social media groups, and they were distributed across the globe, covering 11 countries in the US, Canada, Europe, Asia, and Africa. The participants shared their detailed narratives of their breast pumping journeys, which we then analyzed by applying reflexive thematic analysis. Breast pumping in the workplace is structured around attending to the bodily need by figuring out a right pumping spot, fitting pumping schedule into the workday schedule, and performing logistical work. So imagine yourself to be sitting in a space like this. You will find yourself moving around the corridors to find a private space which is appropriate for you. Then you'll have to use the common pantry area, the common fridge to store the express milk, and using areas such as kitchen sink to wash the equipments and pump parts. So in our study, depending upon the situations, participant pumped in different kinds of spaces. This included use of personal office, shared office, open office, restroom, car, meeting room, call rooms, and designated lactation room. Workplaces can make intimate body work awkward. Breast pumping as a bodily act involves bodily fluids in breast. It is often viewed with suspicion and disgust, seen as an activity out of place at work. This creates anxiety for many women, making them conceal their pumping activities and leaving them feeling awkward. In our study, one of the common awkward moments shared by the participant was when they wanted to take a pumping break but could not do so because they were in a situation that was difficult to interrupt. For example, Mila, who is an academic and had her breast pumping time in a UK university, she felt like this. You know what, sometimes I just sat there in pain and terror because you also know you'll start leaking at some point, and it is like, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? While juggling with the space-time commitments of pumping, participants' experiences involved meeting invisibility challenges at different levels, at the institution level and at interpersonal level with the supervisor and co-workers. The ways participants compensated for invisibility resulted in negative outcomes for them in the form of facing a reduction in their milk supply, having to tolerate engorged breasts for extended periods of time, and eventually having to wean pumpings sooner than desired. Michelle, who is an occupational therapist in the US, shared her experience of returning to her workplace like this. So me going in, I knew that I would have to prepare myself. So when I first started pumping, is every 3 hours. But I realized maybe at like 8 weeks, like I cannot sustain every 4 hours at work. That's just not going to be realistic for me. So I had to plan to wean a pump, and I trained my body in order. I pump at 6 a.m. and then I don't pump again until noon. So that's for most women, they would maybe lose supply or whatever because of that large gap. But I had to do it because there was no other way I would be able to take a break. I'm already reducing my productivity, I can't further reduce it. Across different experiences, we observed there was a lack of interaction regarding how one can actually take pumping breaks during the workday, and it was mainly left for the individuals to just fit their pumping somehow into their work schedule. With invisibility as the persistent background condition, intimate care practice can become extremely overwhelming, putting individuals on the edge. In response, some of the participants took an active stance towards making their journeys feasible for them. For example, Mila, who was an academic in a UK university, shared her experience of one day like this. My office had a glass panel. I then went and I patched it up with paper because I didn't want anyone to see, sure enough. Like a week after, the fire marshal was on my door saying, "This is actually a problem. I need to be able to see whether you are still alive and well in your office." But so I just never took it down. He never returned. Nobody ever made a formal complaint. So a lot of this formal pushback, basically that you have to be willing to engage in to create the space that you need. Yet it is important to note that Mila and some other participants, they were in a relatively privileged position in their workplace. Doing the same might come with adverse outcomes for some other participants who were in the lower position in their workplace hierarchy. As one aspect of how participants negotiated breast pumping at work, it was interesting to observe the kinds of pumps they chose and how they appropriated these pumps to make their pumping feasible. Most of the participants had used more than one type of breast pumps. Participants used the portability and discreteness in different ways. For example, Celine is a school teacher in Singapore. She was given a dedicated room for pumping that was made by converting a toilet. Because the room lacked air conditioning, Celine decided to pump at her desk in an open office space. Celine used a wearable pump and then further arranged her pumping by using nursing covers and special clothings. She explained that the use of nursing cover, the pump sound, and all of these things made her pumping visible to others to some extent. She gave an example of how her colleagues would come to meet her would stop and ask if they should wait and come again when she was done. Jane is a researcher in Switzerland. She used two kinds of pump at her workplace. She used an electric breast pump, which was her main pump, for her first break in the morning that she would take by going into a meeting room. And she used a wearable pump for her second break later in the day at her desk. Her main concern was the pressure of productivity. Jane always felt there was too much work to leave her desk. So she brought an additional wearable pump to save time. Though her experience of using the wearable pump was not very satisfying, Jane shared that she observed poor efficiency in terms of milk extraction, and also she could not feel calm by working while pumping. On the other hand, Diana is a receptionist in a health clinic. She shared her desk with her other colleague. She preferred to use a semi-variable pump and felt comfortable in doing light activities while pumping at her desk. Diana also shared that the visibility of her pump allowed her to coordinate with her colleagues in attending to the client sometimes. For example, whenever there were customers coming in, and when colleagues see that Diana is busy in pumping, they would take over. So in this interplay of the breast pump choice, the use of breast pumps, and different interpersonal configurations, there are interesting sides for interaction designers to think about how to design for intimate care outside the home. Finally, through the illustration of stories in this complex space of intimate body work in the professional setting, we discuss how striving for the potent vision of invisible computing risk reinforcing the very ideologies, codes of conduct, societal norms, and values that make intimate care in professional spaces difficult. We present visibility as the core tenet upon which SIGCHI and interaction design might focus to support individuals in exercising and accessing their rights to bodily care and dignity. By considering feminist work as the creation of a sensation to expose inequalities and injustice, we propose examining the mediating role that technologies might play in making space for intimate care in the workplace. For further interesting details, I invite you to read our paper. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation.